Hello and welcome. I am Jay Holmes Racer and welcome back to the home of all things Btcc. It is race week. We've got Croft this weekend, but a little catch up. I still haven't done my look back at Thruxton, so I'm going to go through that and do a little talk on Croft. So what happens in my videos is normally I go through every driver and give a little bit of information how their weekend went previously. I'm going to change that a little bit this time. So start off, I'm going to go through look back at the 5 drivers I picked to watch for Thruxton, see how their weekend went. Then look at 5 drivers that had a good weekend, and that doesn't specifically mean they were the 5 best drivers. They were drivers that had a good weekend, especially even for them if they did anything notable. 5 drivers had a poor weekend. Again, it was not going to be the worst 5 drivers. It'll be 5 drivers that for them had poor weekends, and then I will do my usual 5 drivers to look out for at Croft. So let's get into it and look at our 5 drivers that I picked. The 5 drivers I picked to watch at Thruxton. How did they get on? So we had Josh Cook, who qualified P3, and they had a win, 2 podiums, got 2 fastest laps as well. Highest scoring driver of the weekend with 50 points. Highest scoring weekend for him as well. Puts him up to 3rd in the championship, just 7 points behind 2nd place Ingram now. It's a fantastic weekend for Cook. He's just known for going so well across Thruxton, sorry, isn't he? And yet again, he's done it. He just seems unstoppable. I think if we did 10 rounds at Thruxton, Cook would easily win the championship. But he just seems to do so well at Thruxton. Didn't put a foot wrong all weekend and just finds pace around Thruxton that no one else does. So that was a good pick there. We also had a team with Sarah Proctor, who had 3 top 10 finishes, 1 podium. It's the 3rd time in a row he's had a 30+ point weekend, which is pretty impressive. Gets him into top 10 in the championship, and that now gives him 11 consecutive top 10 finishes. That is an incredible stat, I think. That Sarah Proctor's really taken to that Btcc Honda now. I think he struggled a little bit to him, especially at Snetterton, but he's come into his own since then. He's done fantastic. Had he been there from the start, he might even be up in the title challenge with Cook, but we're still 4 rounds left to go. He's in the top 10 of the championship now. It's going to start affecting him if he moves up the championship and gets more weight for qualifying. But I think Proctor is doing so well and had another great weekend there. Move on to Shedden, who on the other hand of it, another Honda, but had a bit of a shocker. Only qualified P14 and finished race 1 P3. You think sheds the weight and goes a bit quicker, but then ended up with 2 DNFs. Only scored 3 points all weekend, and that means now from the 6 rounds at Thruxton this weekend, 6 rounds at Thruxton this season, he's only scored a total of 16 points, which is pretty shocking. I think Shedden will be absolutely glad to see the back of Thruxton for this season, because it just hasn't gone his way at all. Some big crashes as well, but it's Shedden's inconsistency seems to be costing him a little bit this season, but a bit of a shocker. Rowbottom managed his 2nd pole of the season. That means he's the joint most this season out with Turkington, which is super awesome from Rowbottom. You know, a lot of people doubt him at the start of the season, but proving he is the man to be there. But unfortunately, his race day didn't go great. He dropped to P6 in race 1, DNF race 2, and finished P14 in race 3. Just for some reason, those Dynamics Hondas, even without having crashes and problems and stuff like that, just absolutely do not seem to have the pace around Thruxton that Btcc seem to get out of their Hondas. And finally, we had Ingram, who qualified P12, and that's actually his worst qualifying this season if you take out Alton Parkside, where he didn't actually set a lap time. And I got a P10 and P2 in race 1 and 2, and a P5 with the fastest lap in race 3, with a bit of a stop-start race. We got a lot of incidents, a lot of safety car action, didn't we? So we didn't really get a lot of chance to probably put the foot down. It looked like he probably was quite quick for race 3, but just didn't get a chance to prove that. But he did lose some ground to Sutton, unfortunately. And what was a tough weekend for him. It was okay, but you know, and Sutton's going to be bagging lots of points as he always does. Unfortunately, it just didn't work out for him. So not too bad. No, Cook and Proctor had pretty good weekends. Shedden and Rowbottom not so great, and Ingram kind of indifferent. So middle of the road now, kind of my picks, so not too bad. But what I will now go on to is the new section of my kind of reviews, and that is 5 drivers that had a good weekend and 5 that had a bad weekend. So what we'll follow on with some of this might be some carryovers from drivers that I've already spoke about. But 5 drivers I thought had a good weekend. I had to start with Josh Cook, top point scorer. No, he's had commentary a lot of times, king of Thruxton, and he pretty much just is for a reason. Definitely gives him a chance to the championship. It's up to 3rd again now. He just needs to carry going on that. Sutton does look almost impossible to catch. but Cook is really up there with a chance behind Ingram. But undeniable how good Cook is at Thruxton. We've also got Kell. Actually achieved his highest qualifying of the season with a P2 and managed 3 top 4 finishes. He got a podium in one race, he finished second, and the second time this season that Jake has had a 40+ point weekend, and the other time we did that was also at Thruxton right at the start of the season. So another driver that seems to really enjoy driving at Thruxton. I think Jake's up to about 4th. I will just double check that. I should have checked that earlier. He's pretty high up in the championship. Jake is 4th in the championship, spot on, not too far behind Cook and Ingram. But it's still with a chance of the championship if anyone can catch our Sutton. But obviously Hill and Cook would love to just keep racing at Thruxton. I've also got Adam Morgan, 3 top 8 finishes, another win, second of the season, 38 points. The only time he got better than that was the 41 he scored at Alton Park. So Adam Morgan seems to be, I think sometimes the BMW, we know the BMW is a pretty good car, but it seems to a little bit struggle in certain areas, or Adam seems to be struggling in certain areas with overtaking cars. But once he gets to the front, he seems to be pretty hard to catch and overtake. I know it was a stop-start race, race number 3, so no one really got a chance to overtake him. And obviously we had that kind of incident where he straight around the chicane on one lap. It took a while overtaking to be able to get it into the back room, which stopped him having a chance to overtake. But Egerton did say himself he probably will struggle to pass Morgan anyway. We've also got Roy Butcher, 3 top 6 finishes. Third time he has a 30+ point weekend this season. But problem is with Roy Butcher, he seems to have one good weekend and one bad weekend. So if it carries on like that, Croft could be a tough weekend for him. I think that's what's keeping Butcher out of the title fight, unfortunately. He's not able to consistently have good weekends. He has one very good weekend like he did at Thruxton, but then if he carries on the form he's had this season, Croft this weekend is going to be super tough for him. But you never know, he could still have a chance. He did pretty well race 1 at Croft last season, and he struggled with race 2 because he went off. So you never know. And my final driver is not a driver that got a lot of points. Like I said, I'll do this, but this is Jack Beautel. So back-to-back point scoring weekends. I think that might be the first time he's ever done that. I don't think he did it last season in a Mercedes. Seems to be firmly within that midfield pack now. They kind of had the front runners, the ones going for the lead, kind of a middle pack and the back pack. Beautel's kind of had himself at the front of that backpack, but he now seems to be right onto that middle pack. Right in there, I think the progression of the the Hyundai is helped by Tom Ingram coming in, hopefully Jack learning from him. So great for that, and he's won the Jack Sears Trophy for that weekend. I think that's the first time he's ever won it. Certainly the first time this season, first time it's not been Rowbottom to win it. So that is a great achievement for Jack Beautel. I did say in a few reviews ago, we need to see a little bit more from him, and he certainly stepped it up. Moving on from that, we're going to go with our 5 bad weekends now. We're going to look at Gordon Shedden. I mentioned the P14 in qualifying race. 1 he was P13 and 2 DNFs, 3 points. Worst weekend of the season. And like I said, just consistency is costing Shedden this season. You know he's quick, the car's quick. Even Btcc is showing that even more than Dynamics, which is part of my point, especially at Thruxton. Btcc seems to be able to get pace out the Honda FK8 that Dynamics can't. I think Cook knows the track better than anyone, which just probably helps them. But Dynamics just struggling for some pace that Btcc is able to show. Also got Stephen Jelly, who qualified P15 and then finished P15 twice in a P14. So it's kind of consistent. He just never went anywhere really, and you'd expect a lot more from a BMW. So I did not want one of the worst drivers this weekend, but only to pick up a couple of points is not great from Stephen Jelly. Would expect a lot more. He probably will go a lot better this weekend at Croft. But that was just a very nothing weekend really for Jelly. Ollie Jackson, I've talked about him a few times in my reviews. Another bad weekend, and he's just nowhere near Hill in that Ford. No points scored, and he's actually now only scored 5 points in the last 13 races since he got a podium in race 2 at Snetterton. He's just, I don't know what's happened to Ollie Jackson. He seems to have really picked himself up last season, and that Ford seems to be going well. And then this season, he just doesn't seem to be going anywhere. He's nowhere near Hill at all. And he seems to be really struggling to even be in that midfield battle. I said Jack Beautel's getting into that midfield battle. Jackson's always struggling to even be in it at the moment. Just a bit of a strange one, really. He just doesn't seem to be doing anything at all. And the final two drivers I've got are both from the same team, both Team Hard Coopers. So I went with Jack Goff, qualified P17, and 3 times worse. That was the last race before that. I knocked out P18, then he finished P20, P16, and P18. The race pace, I mean, we're known for qualifying race pace. One lap pace has always struggled in the Cooper, but the race pace really seems to be bad this time. Race 1 particularly, Jack looked pretty bad. Race 2 he looked okay again. And then race 3 seemed to lose places. I do think there was some misdemeanors going on with the safety car coming out and people were taking when they shouldn't, but it wasn't really like that. But the Cooper just didn't look like it had any pace at all, and it looked absolutely terrible at Thruxton. It seems to struggle so much on the hard tyres, so hopefully moving on to Croft where they're not using the hard tyre will be better for them. But for whatever reason, it doesn't seem to have had the same pace in that Cooper that it had in Brands Hatch when Jack got that podium. And his teammate Aaron Taylor-Smith also scored 0 points. First time he's had a 0 point weekend, same as Jack. No points at all for any of the Coopers. And he also had his first DNF, unfortunately, Taylor-Smith this season. But like I said, the Coopers just on the whole, it wasn't even just the drivers, the way they were driving or anything like that. But the Cooper just didn't look like the car for Thruxton, unfortunately. And it just seemed to really struggle. Croft wouldn't have been a track I would put it down to do well at. But it's surely got to do something better than it did at Thruxton, which surprised me because Jack's had some good results there in the past. But fingers crossed it does something else. And then finally we will move on to our 5 drivers to watch for Croft. So pretty much, to be fair, these names for Croft are pretty big names that I've pulled out. And I've gone with our big one from Thruxton, Josh Cook. It's a bit of pole, 2 wins and a fastest lap there last season. Honda dominated pretty much last season. I look back at the results and I was surprised to see how well the Hondas went. I expected it to be a rear-wheel drive track. He does have the 3rd most weight, so he could struggle for qualifying and race 1. But I expect him to shift that after race 1 and go a lot quicker in race 2 and 3. I expect him to have a competitive weekend, especially look back at last season and how well Cook's been this season. Next driver is Colin Turnston. Now he will benefit because he's only 5th in the championship, so he will have lesser weight than some of his bigger rivals. Known as the King of Croft, 12 career wins shows how good he is there. Pretty bad weekend last season. Obviously he got a P3 in race 1, but had 2 retirements in race 2 and 3. Wouldn't expect him to do that again. And Croft being a traditional BMW track, really, as a real drive, but BMWs in particular have done well. I know it was Honda dominated last season, but I would expect Turnston to really come back and have a really good weekend, especially if he can qualify in pole. The season's had 2 already, and some of his big rivals are carrying more weight. Ash Sutton, got to put him in there. Like I said, I think this is a real-world drive track, even though it was dominated by the Hondas last season. Infinity was super quick last season. If Ash hadn't had an incident race 1, he ended up hitting Hill race 2. If he hadn't done that, he probably could have maybe even won at least 1 race, maybe 2 or 3 even. It was that quick. And it just looks unstoppable this season anyway. I said if it is really well dominated, like kind of it was at one time, specifically with the BMWs. I mean, Hondas do well again. That's why some Hondas are in my top 5 here, or 5 to watch. But I expect Ash to actually come away from the weekend with an even bigger lead and go into the final round. It could be almost done and dusted by Brands Hatch the way we're going. You got Tom Ingram, driving before, took a win in race 3 last season after working his way through from the back, started right from the back of the grid in race 1. And the Hyundai was kind of sniffing around the top 10 last season when the Hyundai wasn't the best, putting Tom in the car. I think that car's progressed a lot this season, and Tom's an even better driver. I think that Hyundai and Tom will be in there. I just don't know if he'll be able to get more points than Sutton. I think Sutton will still get more points than Ingram, unfortunately. Hopefully if Ingram can hang on, go into tracks like Silverstone, Donington and Brands towards the end of the season, that should really help Ingram maybe catch up some more points as long as he's still within a sniff. And my final driver, I have gone for another Honda. A bit of a risk on this one, but I've gone for Rowbottom. Reason being, he's only 8th in the championship currently. Has the 2nd most poles with taken to this season out of 2 apiece. Being quite light could give him a chance, especially when it was so Honda dominated last season. Gives Rowbottom a chance if he can get himself on pole and hopefully get a good race 1. Starts off from there. And sometimes it seems like a track. I looked back some of the results. There wasn't too many big overtakes or moves on the grid in some places last season. I don't think we had 2 different tyre types that might make a difference, But if Robo can get another pole, a third pole this season, maybe even get a race 1 win, he could be on for a good weekend. So that is my roundup from last season. So last race weekend of Thruxton, going on to Croft, hope for some good weekends, hoping those Coopers do go a lot better. I'm not quite sure what to expect. Traditionally, I'd put it down as a rear-wheel drive track, although it wasn't last season. Honda's dominated, but you never know if the front-wheel drive cars like the Hondas are still going quick. Then maybe the Coopers can have a chance to sneak in there and do something as well. Let's look forward and hope for a good weekend of racing. I am going to say I'm being biased and hope the Coopers, especially Jack Goff, as well. But thank you for joining me for today's video, and we will see you again after Croft. See you then.